Let's get the camera fixed. I don't know why I gotta do this every time. It's like every single time I do it, it's refocusing faster and stuff, but like, that's just weird. Alright, let's DVD it. Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight. BLoodMOON. We're gonna get some more of this tiny mark going. Let's see. Hello, just started. Should I was doing something on killer side, I think. Try to do. Oh, in your yeah. Okay. Let me take the playing out, because what? 23, okay. Just checking the low. Alexa, play Lore Podcast, episode 7.
Getting lore from Amazon Music. Resuming episode 7, In the Woods.
From ancient Rome to where you'd like to roam, T-Mobile's network is there.
Alexa, restart.
Restarting episode 8, The Castle.
Alexa, stop. That's not what I want. Alexa, play Lore episode 7.
Getting lore from Amazon Music. Here's episode 7, In the Woods.
From ancient Rome to where you'd like to roam, T-Mobile's network is there. Because T-Mobile helps keep you connected. From big cities to your hometown on America's largest 5G network. Get 4 5G phones on them and 4 lines for $25 per line per month when you switch with eligible trade-ins. Or learn more at T-Mobile.com/switch. Minimum 4 lines, $25 per line per month. Auto pay discount. You can never bank account. $5 more per line without auto pay. Tax and fees. $10 device connection charge. Phones to the 24-month bill credits. While all life customers contact us before canceling inheritance.
This message comes from Greenland. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. Greenlight's debit card and money app can change the course of your kids' financial future. Start your risk-free trial at greenlight.com/start.
Alexa, volume up. I like listening to this while I'm playing, for some reason.
Nothing can be as isolating or confining as the woods. They seem to cut us off from the rest of the world, leaving us alone, balanced on the edge of being lost. Even in these thoroughly modern times, the woods seem to exist as a reminder that so much of the world is outside of our control. Sure, we could stay on the path, but those narrow routes between the trees only give us the illusion of control, like a trail of breadcrumbs. They're fragile and fleeting, and somewhere in the back of our minds we understand that if we were to leave the trail, we would be stepping into the unknown. The woods hide things from us. For centuries, criminals have used the dark cloak of the forest to conceal everything from bootlegging and poaching to drug use and murder. Wild from us.
Excuse me.
Enough doubt and mystery that we end up believing that anything could be living out there. Anything. are darker than others. In some places, the woods are more than just a gathering of trees and undergrowth. There are locations in our world that are consistently avoided, plagued by rumor, and dense with fear. To step into one of these places is to abandon all safety, all reason, and all hope. I'm Aaron Mankey, and this is Lore. Between the three Massachusetts towns of Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown exists a triangular slice of land that has become home to hundreds of reports of unexplainable phenomenon. It's known as the Bridgewater Triangle, though some call it the Black Triangle or the Devil's Triangle. It might not be swallowing up fighter jets and colonial-era ships like the Bermuda Triangle to the south, but its history is just as storied and mysterious. One of the areas within the triangle is the Hockomock Swamp.
It's a good map.
It's a 17,000-acre
Wow, listen to Lore.
near Bridgewater, Massachusetts.
Enjoy. I hope
In
everyone
the
else likes it too.
1600s,
I
it
don't
was
know.
inhabited by the Wampanoag tribe of Native
But I love it.
Americans, and a fort they built inside it became a strategic location for them during King Philip's War in 1670. One legend tells how, during those times of upheaval and invasion by the colonies, a powerful artifact was lost in the swamp. Now, I can't find anything beyond a small Wikipedia entry to confirm this, but the story tells of how an object known as the Wampum Belt was lost during the war, and as a result, the swamp became a home to restless spirits. Ever since, the swamp has been the source of a nearly endless supply of unexplainable sightings. One of the most dramatic and best documented reports was made by a local police officer, Sergeant Thomas Downey. On December 9th in 1971, Downey was driving home toward the town of Easton, near a place known as Bird Hill that sits at the edge of the swamp. As he approached the hill, he caught sight of an enormous winged creature. Downey claims it was over 6 feet tall and had a wingspan of almost 12 feet. After reporting the sighting to the Easton police, he quickly earned the nickname of the Birdman. Now, I don't know about you, but it seems odd that a police officer would risk his reputation on such an unusual claim if it was just a joke. Officer Downey clearly saw something then. Just what that thing was, though, is open to debate. Decades earlier, in 1999, the Civilian Conservation Corps were working on the edge of the swamp near King Philip's Street. While there, workers claimed to have seen a huge snake as large around and as black as a stovepipe. According to the report, the snake coiled for a moment, raised its head,
snakes.
and then vanished into the swamp.
Ooh.
And what wooded area would be complete without Bigfoot sightings? Although a tall, hairy creature has been sighted dozens of times over the years in various parts of the Bridgewater Triangle, the most common appearances have been near the swamp. In 1983, John Baker, a local photographer, had a similar experience. He was on his canoe in the swamp when he heard a splash. He turned to see, and I quote, a hairy beast slog into the river and pass within a few yards of his boat. In 1978, a local named Joe DeAndre was standing on the shore of a pond in Bay Banks. He claimed that he turned and saw what he described as a creature that was all brown and hairy, like an apish man thing. Oddly enough, I went to high school with a guy who fits that description. But there's been more than just weird animal sightings in the swamp. As far back as the late 19th century, locals have reported seeing unusual lights. One report was made by two undertakers who were traveling past the swamp on Halloween night in 1901. They claimed to have seen a light that hovered in the sky for almost an hour. Whether the reports of creatures or lights are true or not, it might be worth mentioning that the Wampanoag word Wampanoag literally means place where the spirits dwell. Another hot spot in the southeastern corner of the triangle is the Freetown State Forest. If all the stories are to be believed, it's the quintessential haunted forest. Deep inside the park is a cliff known as the Astronaut Ledge that overlooks an old quarry. There have been reports of hauntings near the ledge, of visions and ghostly figures. Some stories tell of a woman in white who lingers near the precipice. Others claim to have heard voices while visiting there. The most common report is of mysterious lights. Some researchers think they know exactly where those lights come from, too. They're the tools of a creature known as the Pukwudgie.
It's a funny name.
In ancient Wampanoag folklore, the Pukwudgie is a small, forest-dwelling creature, something like a troll or a goblin, that lives in the wooded areas around the world. Aside from having one of the most entertaining names to say out loud, they are said to be small, hairy people, roughly 3 feet tall, who hide in the woods and cause trouble to people who discover them. What kind of trouble? Well, Wampanoag folklore tells us that Pukwudgies use lights to lure travelers into the woods, where they would kill them. These lights, according to legend, are known as the Taipewonkas, the North American version of the English will-o'-the-wisp, sometimes referred to as ghost lights. The Pukwudgies use the lights as bait, luring people to their death. Rather than attacking hikers outright, apparently these creatures prefer to let the land itself kill their victims. Coincidentally, one of the most common experiences reported by visitors to the ledge is an overwhelming urge to jump. Those normal people have felt nearly suicidal standing atop the ledge. Many of them claim upon approaching the edge of the cliff that they felt an almost uncontrollable desire to jump off into the dark, rocky water over 100 feet below.
It's scary.
One story in particular bears retelling. Bill Russo was a welder from Raymond. He worked long hours, and for the 6 years prior to his retirement, he worked the late shift from 3 p.m. until midnight. By the time he got home from work, Bill's dog Samantha was in desperate need of a walk, so before bed, Bill would take her out and let her get some exercise. They kept this habit up each and every night, no matter the season or the weather. On a night in 1995, Bill took Samantha out for an unusual walk. The typical route was to stay on the sidewalks and head toward the center of town. But on this night, they made a change. Bill decided on a whim to cut through his own backyard and head along a trail through the woods that ran alongside the swamp. Not a choice I would have made, mind you, even with a German Shepherd and Rottweiler mix as my companion. About half a mile into their walk, at a place where the path was crossed by a road, Samantha began acting odd. She was tugging at the leash and trembling, and kept glancing back at Bill with worried eyes. Bill pulled at the leash to lead her home. The dog wouldn't budge. She just whined and quivered where she stood. After a moment, Bill began to hear the sound that had frightened the dog. It was a thin, high-pitched voice faint at first, but growing louder as it continued. And even though Bill couldn't understand what the voice was saying, it kept repeating the same sounds. Ee-wah-choo, it seemed to say. Ee-wah-choo. It was midnight, in the woods, so, of course, Bill couldn't see anything. But he tried. He scanned the trees and bushes for whatever could be making the sounds. There was even a street light nearby, casting a small circle of light on the pavement. But he didn't see anything. And then suddenly, something stepped into the light. According to Bill, it was perhaps 4 feet tall, covered in hair, walked on 2 legs like a human, and looked to weigh no more than 100 pounds. It was naked and pot-bellied, and looked nothing like anything Bill had ever seen before in the swamp. And as it stepped out of the trees and into the light, it continued to speak to him. Ee-wah-choo, it said again. Keir, Keir. Bill and Samantha stood frozen to the ground, paralyzed with fear. And as the dog continued to whine and shiver, the creature lifted its arms and beckoned them to follow. Ee-wah-choo, it said again, motioning to them. Here. Bill claims that he tried asking the creature a few questions, but it only replied with the same nonsense it had already said. Not knowing what else to do, Bill managed to tug Samantha after him, and they both turned and headed home. They didn't look back. It's not the trees that make the woods a frightening place. It's what the trees conceal. There's no telling what creatures hide behind the green leaves and thick branches of the forest landscape. Cryptozoologists, ghost hunters, and believers in the supernatural are often seen as abnormal. They believe in things that can't possibly be real. But when we step into the woods, when we surround ourselves with the dark embrace of the unknown, somehow the impossible begins to seem more likely. Maybe we want to believe. Maybe that feeling we get in the pit of our stomachs when we step into a strange wooded area is a cry for answers. There has to be something more out there, right? Maybe that's all we want to know, but we're simply too afraid of the answers. Bill Russo experienced that same fear on that night in 1995. He and Samantha managed to find their way home, but he was beyond shaken up. Even though it was 1 o'clock in the morning, he went into the kitchen and brewed himself a pot of coffee. There was no way he was going to let himself sleep that night. Cup after cup, hour after hour, Bill relived the experience over and over again, playing back everything he heard and saw. He experienced doubt and fear and regret. He wondered if maybe he should have tried harder to speak with the creature. Perhaps he should have approached it if Samantha would have allowed him to, that is. But the question that plagued him for most of that night was more difficult. What was the creature saying to him? Bill wrestled with his memory of those sounds all through the night. Ee-wah-choo, it had said, and then Keir. Before sunrise, Bill was almost positive that he had his answer. It wasn't another language the creature was speaking after all. It had been trying its best to use English. And the words it kept repeating, "We want you," it had been saying. come here.
It's creepy. And that's true. All these tales I listen to are all true.
From ancient Rome to where you'd like to roam, T-Mobile's network is there. Because T-Mobile helps keep you connected. From big cities to your hometown on America's largest 5G network. Get 4 5G phones on them. 4 lines for $25 per line per month when you switch with eligible trade-ins. Or learn more at T-Mobile.com/switch. Minimum 4 lines, $25 per line per month. $1 paid discount. You can never bank account. $5 more per line without auto pay plus taxes and fees plus $10 twice connection charge. Phones exceed the 24 monthly bill principal while qualified customers. Contact us before canceling inheritance.
Did you just call your boss Mom?
Thanks, Mom.
What? Did you get your pants caught in an escalator? Oh, no. Did you accidentally pick up someone else's kid from school?
Wait a minute, you're okay.
Then you need Teriyaki Madness.
Pick somebody
It's
else's
marinated
kid
grilled
up.
meat and fresh wok-tossed veggies over steaming rice with addictive teriyaki sauce. And it's so delicious, it fixes everything. Teriyaki Madness. Crazy delicious. Find a location near you at teriyakimadness.com.
This episode of Lore was researched, written, and produced by me, Aaron Mankey. Lore is much more than a podcast. There's a book series in bookstores around the country and online, and the second season of the
play Lore episode 15.
Getting Lore from Amazon Music. Here's episode 15, Unboxed.
Thank you. This is my favorite one. But they are all... I haven't listened to every single one. He adds new ones all the time, so... Lore, L-O-R-E. Check it out. And check out the Amazon Prime television show that's titled by the same name. Unboxed is also on there as well.
Minimum 4 lines, $25 per line per month. $1 paid discount. You can never bank account. $5 more per line without auto pay plus taxes and fees plus $10 twice connection charge. Phones to the 24 monthly bill principal while qualified customers. Contact us before canceling inheritance.
Amazon Pharmacy presents Painful Thoughts. 20 more minutes to kill the pharmacy before my prescription is ready. Maybe I'll grab some deeply discounted out-of-season Halloween candy. I never had a chocolate pumpkin with raisins before. Those were raisins, right? Next time, use Amazon Pharmacy. We deliver. And no, those were not raisins.
Amazon Pharmacy. He said.
Here just got less painful.
My great-grandmother was a painter. She picked it up anyway, but she produced dozens and dozens of oil paintings once she hit her stride. They're mostly still life studies and landscapes, but they're not just masters by any stretch of the imagination. But to our family, they're precious. They connect us to her. Because of this, those paintings have become a centerpiece of her extended family. Generation after generation now makes room on their walls for as many of these framed treasures as they can acquire. People have a way of becoming attached to things. Maybe it's the long journey that these objects accompany us on through our lives, or perhaps it's due to the feelings they can evoke when we see them or touch them. Or maybe, deep down, we understand that even though our lives might be fleeting and temporary, these things, these objects we grow to love and revere, seem to live on after we're gone. This habit of attributing personality and emotion to our possessions is something known as anthropomorphism. We give human characteristics to things that are far from human. Some people name their cars and talk to them like an old friend. Others will say that their house has a lot of nervous energy. They don't, but at the same time, they do. You know? The best place to see this practice in action is in the presence of children. The toys they cherish, the ones that follow them from room to room, or lay in their laps on long car rides, or get pulled under the covers with them at bedtime, those objects take on a personality of their own.
Oftentimes, it's just a game. Other times, it's a coping mechanism for loss or fear. Sometimes, on very rare occasions, these objects seem to set the rules themselves. They make their own decisions. They guide the children's decisions, as if someone or something were controlling them. I'm Aaron Mankey, and this is Lore. In 1982, a backhoe operator was preparing a building site for development in Titusville, Florida. While working on one of the ponds, he noticed what he thought were rocks visible in the mud. But something didn't sit right with him, and so he climbed out and took a closer look. What he had thought to be stones actually turned out to be bones, specifically a human skull. The county medical examiner was brought in, but it became clear almost immediately that the bones belonged to someone who had died a very long time ago. When Florida State University became involved, they uncovered, so to speak, the truth. The bones belonged to a 3-year-old girl who had died more than 7,000 years before Florida had become a state. It was clear that she had been buried by her parents, though. They had wrapped her in cloth made from local plant fibers, and then placed her in a shallow grave. But she wasn't alone. With her in the ground, placed near her arms in case she wanted them, were her toys. It seems that children have had toys, objects that they loved and played with, for thousands of years, perhaps tens of thousands. The toys were still rare. In a world where everyone had to contribute to the well-being of the community, even the children were expected to grow up fast and do their part. When they did have toys, they were often basic in shape, such as marbles or a doll. They would also play with objects meant to represent the things most important to their village or clan. Toy animals, soldiers, religious icons, all are commonly found objects by archaeologists in the graves of ancient children. Interestingly, the ancient Greeks expected children to give up their toys when they came of age. Young women would actually take their toys to the local temple on the night before their wedding, where they would offer them as sacrifice to the gods. These rules began to shift after the advent of the Enlightenment in the mid-1600s. Society became more affluent, and children weren't expected to work as often as they had previously. In addition, their toys became more complex and useful. Jigsaw puzzles were born in 1767 as a way of teaching geography, and board games from the same period were meant to entertain. Toys had evolved. But throughout all of history, it seems, across cultural boundaries and spanning thousands of years of art and technology, there has been one constant in the world of toys. From the tombs of the pharaohs in Egypt to the shelves of Target down the street, one toy has maintained a universal and timeless appeal. Dolls. They're literal representations of us, after all. They personify the people we love and provide comfort to the lonely in a way that no other toy can. And because of that, people get attached. Children refuse to put them down. And even in adulthood, dolls have a tendency to be kept around. Sometimes, though, the rules are reversed. As unhealthy as it sounds, there have been more than a few stories of dolls, not children, who refuse to let go. They seem to take control, to set the tone, and dominate the lives of the people who own them. And sometimes, the consequences have been frightening. Thomas and Minnie Otto were a well-off and well-traveled couple who had a deep love of the arts. They were natives of Key West, Florida, and in 1898, they completed building a brand new home there on Eden Street. 2 years after moving in, the couple welcomed their third child to the family,
A son they named Robert Eugene. They called him Gene, and the family quickly settled into their leisurely lifestyle in the Keys. They had more than enough money, and they spent it on convenience, which included a staff of caretakers around the house. Cooks and maids were always at the ready, including a woman from Jamaica who worked as little Gene's nurse. History doesn't remember her name. If you were a woman in 1904, that was pretty common, unfortunately. If your skin color wasn't pale and European, those chances dropped even more. So we don't know her name. But we do know that she loved Gene. She spent hours with him every day. She traveled with the Ottos on their journeys around the country, caring for him like a turn-of-the-century version of an African-American man. She was close to him. That's probably why she gave him a doll. It was big, about the size of a 4-year-old boy, in fact. It was filled with straw, hand-sewn, and dressed in a white sailor's uniform. And Gene loved it. He took it everywhere with him, on travels abroad and on day trips into town with his mother. It was said that he even sometimes wore a similar outfit, and the two seemed like siblings. Gene called the doll Robert, using his own first name, and their relationship got off to a storybook start. The doll had its own chair near the dining room table, and Gene would sneak little pieces of food to it and during bath times, the doll would be placed on the dry towel in the tub while Gene played in the water with toy boats and corks and all the usual things that little kids love to do. Then at the end of the night, Gene would bring Robert to bed with him, and the two of them would be tucked in together. Everything about this is normal. My own children do similar things, naming their dolls and bringing them along for car rides. But for Gene, that's where the normality stopped, because not long after settling into a routine as a boy, things got weird. And according to most reports, it all started with the talking. Gene's parents would often hear their son's voice coming from his bedroom as he played. Even though he was in there alone, it would always sound like he was in deep conversation with someone else. First, they would hear his voice, sweet and tiny, and then another voice would reply, different and rougher than his own. Oftentimes, his voice would sound insistent, while Gene's would almost sound unnerved and flustered. Of course, Gene's parents assumed it was a game, and that he was simply playing make-believe. But over time, they began to second-guess that presumption. During a few of these apparent conversations, Gene's mother would quietly approach the boy's room, and then, without warning, she would burst into the room. Inside, it was said she found her son cowering in the corner of the room, arms wrapped around his knees, while Robert the doll sat on the bed in a chair. She couldn't be sure, but it seemed to her like the doll was glaring at the boy. Things escalated from there. The Ottos awoke on a number of occasions due to sounds Gene screaming in his bedroom. They would rush to his room, only to find him sitting on bed, furniture in the room overturned and his belongings strewn about. According to Gene, Robert was to blame. Robert, the doll glaring at him from the foot of the bed. Robert did it became a common phrase around the Otto house after that. They didn't believe their son, of course, but the boy blamed the doll for most of the unusual activity. When his parents found toys that appeared to have been mutilated or broken, Gene said that Robert had done it. Sometimes the Ottos could hear giggling from somewhere else in the house. Sometimes this happened at night, and each time when Gene was supposed to be in bed. Dishes and silverware were often found thrown about on the dining room floor. Clothing would be found on the floor, appearing to have been shredded by some unknown person. Sometimes servants would enter unused guest rooms only to find that the bedding had been disturbed and pushed off to the carpet. The staff would even find themselves locked out of the house when making their nightly rounds. If Gene was clearly not at fault, sometimes the servants themselves were blamed for the disturbances. As a result, turnover at the house was high, with a constant rotation of servants coming and going. One constant through it all, though, was Robert, the unusual doll in the white suit. And according to some reports, he did more than make a mess. He may have killed. Hearing giggles from the distant part of the house was one thing. Sure, it would unnerve most of us. I know it would freak me out, but the Ottos soldiered on, putting up with the repeated excuses. They were strict parents, maybe even a little overbearing by today's standards. They were always quick to punish teens for mischief. It was one thing to make a mess, but staff was hard to train, and having them frightened away all the time wasn't congruent with their life of convenience. And so they punished Gene. To the boy's credit, he appeared to have been a true believer in his stories. He would put up a small fight, blame the events on the doll, and then take the consequences like a responsible child. But there were other reports about the doll, and these were things that could in no way be blamed on the young Otto boy. Visitors to the house reported that the doll would blink. Some of them claimed to refer to laughter themselves, and at times when the Otto family wasn't even at home. Neighbors said they would sometimes see the doll in the upstairs windows, moving from one to another, glancing out through the curtains toward the street. Servants would find Robert in a completely different part of the house from where he had been left moments before. Sometimes the sounds of small, little feet could be heard moving from room to room. All of this became too much, and extended family stepped in to find a solution. One of Jean's great aunts visited the family to plead her case. The doll was cursed, she said. Some evil spirit lived inside it, and if they wanted to be rid of the chaos and random episodes of disturbance, they needed to get rid of the doll once and for all. On her recommendation, Robert was taken away from Jean and placed inside a box. The box was then moved to the attic of the large house, out of sight and, at least in theory, unable to cast his shadow of fear over the house anymore. The next night, the aunt was found dead in her bedroom. She was an older woman, and so the official story that she had died of a stroke was passed around and believed by all. But the Ottos themselves didn't buy it. Out of fear for their own safety, Robert was brought out of storage and returned to their son's side. And that's how things remained. As all kids do, though, Jean eventually grew up. She trained as a painter, traveled throughout Europe, and eventually married an accomplished pianist. But after his parents passed away, the couple moved back to Florida and took up residence in his old childhood home on Wheaton Street. Gene spent his days painting, and his wife Anne settled into domestic life. And somehow, in the middle of it all, according to the reports, was Robert. Rumors in town spoke of how the doll had a place at the dining room table, and that there was a chair beside their bed for him to sit on during the night, and that Gene had a habit of taking the doll with him as he moved about the house. There were whispers that his wife Anne hated the doll. Unnerved by the presence of the doll so close to their marriage bed, it was said that she stopped allowing Gene to bring it into their room, and for a while he complied. Robert was locked back in bed, but according to reports, that didn't help. Robert would sometimes be found sitting in a rocking chair downstairs, even though he was supposed to have been locked upstairs in the attic. The couple would hear footsteps in the attic at night and the soft, distant sound of laughter. Local legend claims that all of this drove Jean's wife insane, eventually ending her life. The study of folklore often encounters the same patterns throughout the world and across the centuries. One common theme that we see is the dehumanization of people of minority status. The witch trials stand as a somber example of this, where the accused, often women, often poor, and often social outcasts already, were stripped of their humanity and treated like animals and monsters. Robert the doll, though, stands on the opposite side of the spectrum. Rather than being one more tale of someone having their humanity stolen from them, Robert a cloth and straw doll without a soul, appears to have had humanity bestowed upon him. Why? It's hard to say. Perhaps it's because Gene Otto's parents needed an excuse for their son's unusual behavior. Maybe it was a culture of superstition brought into the house by servants with ethnically different backgrounds. Somehow, a living, breathing Robert was an easier story to swallow than the alternative. We'll never know for sure whether Gene Otto invented it all. He passed away in 1974, with Robert at his side. For a while, the house remained uninhabited, unless you count Robert as a resident. But eventually a new family moved in and made the house on Eaton Street their own. They restored a lot of the original charm of the house, and in the process, they found a doll. Maybe they were compelled to, or maybe they had heard about it from locals, but for whatever reason, the new family packed up the doll and moved it to the attic. Eventually, though, the family donated Robert to a local museum. But it wasn't charity that motivated them. It was fear. See, not long after moving in, they began to experience odd things. Things that Gene Otto would have known all too well. Soft giggling, light footsteps in the attic, and random, unexplainable messes. The family's 10-year-old daughter reported that the doll would appear in the house on its own, and on a handful of occasions, it even tried to attack her, a claim that she holds to even now as an adult. But the final straw happened later, when the girl's parents were awoken in the middle of the night. In the darkness of their room, they could hear laughter and the sounds of movement. Alarmed, one of them flipped on the bedside lamp, only to feel their hearts stop. There, at the foot of the bed, was Robert the doll, a kitchen knife in his hand.
From ancient Rome to where you'd like to roam, T-Mobile's network is there. Because T-Mobile helps keep you connected. From big cities to your hometown on America's largest 5G network. Get 4 5G phones on them. 4 lines for $25 per line for switch with eligible trade-ins. Or learn more at T-Mobile.com/switch. Minimum 4 lines, $25 per month. Monthly call basic account. You can never bank on a $5 work line without all the tax and fees plus $10 price commission. Phones to the 24 monthly price for local life customers. Contact us before you the entire day.
Toyota is the best retail value brand for 2025, according to Kelley Blue Book, KBB.com. And with a wide range of dependable vehicles for any lifestyle, you can get everything you need in a vehicle today while investing in tomorrow. So choose Toyota and choose value. Stop by at Toyota.com for great deals and more. Vehicles projected retail volume is specific to the 2025 model year. For more information, visit Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. Kelley Blue Book is a registered trademark of Kelley Blue Book Co. Inc. Toyota, let's go places.
This episode of Lore was researched, written, and produced by me, Aaron Mankey. Lore is much more than a podcast. There's a book series in bookstores around the country and online, and the second season of the Amazon Prime television show was recently released. Check them both out if you want more lore in your life. I also make 2 other podcasts, Aaron Mankey's Cabinet of Curiosities and Unobscured, and I think you'd enjoy both. Each one explores other areas of our dark history, ranging from bite-sized episodes to season-long dives into a single topic. You can learn about both of those shows and everything else going on, all over in one central place, theworldoflore.com/now. And you can also follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for Lore Podcast, all one word, and then click that follow button. When you do, say hi. I like it when people say hi. And as always, thanks for listening.
Alexa, off. Surprised me was back there. Flipped out. Alexa, play WXPN.
WXPN from TuneIn.
Welcome to TuneIn. Hey, thanks for streaming.
Alexa,
XPN.
volume
There's
down.
lots of ways you
Alexa,
can listen from your
volume down. Turn it down, jeez.
and of course the XPN
Oh, wait.
app on your phone. To learn more,
Okay, Gilton, buddy.
xpn.org/listen.
Gate's not open. That gate's open. Just like chilling in here today. It's easy going. Phew. Oh, man. This challenge going. Got that one done. I should say when I come back, I'm gonna run some Survivor.